Was he allowed to sit up there?
Well, good afternoon, and Shabbat Shalom, everyone. A nice, warm winter day here in Texas. 70-something here in Irving, Texas. Yes, welcome to Texas, right?
It's always different.
It's always different every week. The weather's been accused of being bipolar, but welcome to Texas. That's what we say about that. In any case, the title of today's message is the symbols of apostates. We're going to be discussing the symbols of apostates, maybe how they're symbolized, how they're typified in Scripture, and maybe even, as time permits, maybe we might even view a few identities as we go along, some folks as we go along. Because actually I hope this might be fitting in some way, especially what David's been saying, especially what he said today. Because remember, he spoke on people who've had heard this message of righteousness and truth for 1,000 years during the millennium, and yet they are going to reject it. And we're going to give a little bit of piece of what these people are actually like through the associated symbolisms. Because question, first things first, let's come to a definition. What is an apostate? The best definition is a person who renounces a religious or political belief or principle. That's the short and sweet of it. Again, a person who renounces a religious or political belief or principle. That is someone who has known this, or has at least had some type of understanding of it. Now with that, we'll go ahead and jump into the meat of the study. And I'm going to need my eyes. Hey, I can read now. Well, it's going to be kind of an exchange. This is going to come across more as a study than an actual sermon. I'll be straight up about that. Question. I'm going to try to get a little audience participation here. Can anyone come up with any thoughts or ideas on what a symbol or a type of an apostate might be?
A symbol of an apostate?
Yeah. And we're actually going to come across several of these are found in the book of Jude. So let's open up there. Let's read. Let's do just a little bit of reading out of Jude. And some of these we've actually read at the close of Revelation too. David kind of touched on that. He didn't go straight to it, but he kind of
Tiptoed around.
I think you and I are kind of sometimes.
Always.
What are we going crazy?
We're going to start with the book of Jude. We're going to pick it up in verse 5. Actually, let's go ahead and pick it up in verse 3. Let's capture just a little bit of context here. Jude. It's only one chapter of Jude. Verse 3. Beloved, I was very diligent to write to you concerning our common salvation, but found it necessary to exhort you to contend earnestly for the faith which was once delivered for all the saints. For certain men have crept in unnoticed, who long ago were marked out for this condemnation. Ungodly men who turned the grace of Yahweh into lewdness, denying the only master, Elohim, and of course our master, Yahshua Messiah. Verse 5. But I want to remind you, first, before we go to verse 5, what do these people do, these apostates they're doing? What did you teach us about these people? They creep in unnoticed. They're not always, ravaging and roaring lions, although they're listed as such here eventually. But
Wolf with sheep's clothing.
wolves in sheep's clothing, that's very good, Daniel. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. Sometimes these people while they're lions, they're experts at appearing as little kitty cats. Has anyone ever seen a little cute little baby? You know, we go to Facebook and we see these cute little kitty cat videos, right? Little bitty kittens, right? And they're so adorable. But some of these are actually ravishing and roaring lions. So when I started this study, I just started from the order of what I found here in the book of Jude to an extent, and I come across some others as well. But anyone has any thought or ideas of what one might be? What might be a good one? Get your hand up, I'll call on you, and we'll go from there. But Daniel a moment ago brought up wolves in sheep clothing. That's a good one. Let's just start reading in Jude. Keep going in verse 5. But I want to remind you, though you once knew this, Master, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed those who did not believe. And the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but kept their own abode, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day. And Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them, in a similar manner to these, having given themselves over to sexual immorality and gone after strange flesh, they're set forth as an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. What happened to them? They suffered from fire falling out of heaven, this great hailstorm, if you will. Not this ice and cold stuff we get here. But Bob's actually, I believe we have a member on, yeah, Bob here. Bob here actually had an opportunity several years to pick up some of this little remnant of this stuff. These little sulfur balls.
Oh, yeah, the brimstone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ancient fireworks.
It's not a real pleasant thing to be around either, especially when it's lit. Take your breath away.
Yeah, I imagine it would. I wouldn't want to be caught out in a rainstorm of that stuff.
I don't think so.
Likewise, these dreamers defile the flesh, reject authority, and speak evil of dignitaries. Actually, I do want to come back to verse 8 because I just realized I missed one here. Well, just reading here, I just realized I missed one. So I want to make note of it and I want to come back to it. Anyway, verse 9. Yet Michael the archangel, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moses, dared not bring against a reviling accusation. But he said, Yahweh rebuke you. But they speak evil of whatever they do not know. Well, here's what these apostates like. They speak evil things they do not know. Whatever they know naturally, like brute beasts, these things, they corrupt themselves. But woe to them, they have gone in the way of Cain. The way of Cain have run greedily in the error of Balaam for profit and perished in the rebellion of Korah. So as we go on down through Jude, we got a few descriptions of these guys. We even got a couple names here. We have Cain. We have Balaam. And we're going to have somebody else too. That's actually going to be quite pertinent to David's study. It's the one I said I missed when I put this together. These are like verse 12. These are spots in your love feast. While they feast with you without fear, serving only themselves. So when they gather together, these apostates, they're not serving Yahweh. They're feasting on themselves. It's just for the food, the party, and the social club, at best. They go on their lives without fear, being what they are, doing what they do. Because look what, I mean, now Jude is not talking about people at some of the big churches down the street, this way, that way, and some other way, keeping Christmas. I don't believe he means that. I mean, what does he say here in the text? Let's pay attention to what it says here. These are spots in your love feast. Tell me, what love feast did we find listed in Scripture? How about the ones we find listed, say in places like Numbers 28, Numbers 29? The 7 annual feasts we read of every year. How about Leviticus 23? These are the ones that are kept under Yahweh. And remember, he says also while they, so this is what's meant by the love feast. And while they feast with you without fear, so they're doing it with you. So he's not saying while they carol and carouse around in the Christmas parade or the Easter parade or whatever else it is they do. He's not saying about them. He said while they feast with you. And this letter was written to us. For us today, who are they feasting with? Let's back up to the top of James. He says, to those to whom did Jude write this? To those, Jude 1, verse 1. To those who are called and sanctified by Yahweh the Father and preserved in Yahshua Messiah. That's to whom this letter is written. To those whom are called, sanctified by Yahweh the Father and preserved in Yahshua Messiah. So is he talking about the church down the street keeping a big Christmas parade like they did last year? Or is he talking about the church back over yonder ways? About them getting ready for their big Easter parades and their egg hunt and all of that? Getting ready for Peter Cottontail? No, he's not talking, because none of that has anything to do with the body of Yahshua, does it? Not a bit of it. So it's not about them and their practices. It's about what these people bring in where? That's right. You're correct, Tino. You are correct. Spot on. Yes, sir. Right here. It's a warning about what he brings to the congregation of Yahweh, to the house of Yahweh, if you will. The assembly. You choose the term. The assembly of Yahweh, the congregation of Yahweh, the house of Yahweh. You choose the term. So it's a warning about what these people bring here. There are clouds without water. They're carried about without the winds. Carried about by the winds. They're late autumn trees. Verse 12. Late autumn trees without fruit, twice dead, and they're pulled up by the roots. Raging waves of the sea, foaming up their own shame, wandering stars for whom forever preserve the blackness of darkness forever. So I just started with a few out of this listing here, and like I said, I came across a few others later. And if any of y'all get an idea of what might make a good one, get your hand up. I'll call you and we'll talk about it. So I got number one, and just the order in which Jude listed it. Brute beast. Which brings up a question. If they're just a brute beast, what do dumb animals do? Well, I have dumb animals, real, four-legged ones, like dogs, cats, wolves, bears.
Fight against each other.
They what?
Fight against each other.
They fight against each other. That's one thing they do. You're correct. There's a lot of in-house fighting amongst themselves, isn't it? They growl and snarl. They don't speak understandable languages like we do. Bears growl and snarl like bears. Bulls roar like bulls. Wolves growl and bark like wolves and howl like wolves. Dogs do the same thing. Lions roar like lions. They don't meow like little kitty cats. So what do dumb animals do? Verse 10. They speak evil of whatever they do not know. By whatever they know naturally, like brute beasts. Remember, it says, and whatever they know naturally, like brute beasts, these things corrupt themselves. They speak evil of whatever they do not know. So, how could this be pertinent to us in our walk in our way, or especially what David talked about today? Because in spite of 1,000 years of peace and security and well-being, there are some who just aren't going to learn, are they? It's like they never got it. It never got past the skull. It never went down to the heart, did it? Because we read this time and time and again in the cycle of Israel's history. Captivity, freedom, back down to captivity, deliverance, a 7-time cycle that Israel did that in the time of the judges. Let's hold your place in Jude. Let's see what Peter says about these folks. 2 Peter 2, verse 12. Back up shortly into Peter. Peter 2, verse 12. 2 Peter 2, verse 12. In this context, Peter is talking about the dooms of false teachers. So actually, and there's going to be a connection here because a lot of these apostates are in fact false teachers. Even if not all of them are, but certainly a lot of, too many are. I'll use that phrase, too many. Too many are. But these, like natural brute beasts, made to be caught and destroyed. So these beasts were made to be caught and destroyed. Speak evil of the things they do not understand. Nor do they understand and will utterly perish in their own corruption. Will receive the wages of unrighteousness as those who count it pleasure to carouse in the daytime. Either spots and blemishes, carousing in their own deceptions while they feast with you. Here they go again. Peter sees it too. While these people are going about their business while they feast with you. Any question or comment so far? Because who can we think of someone who might fit this description? This dumb beast just snarling like a dumb beast.
Judas? Judas?
I can't hear you speak up. Judas. Iscariot. When he betrayed, the words he spoke to the scribes and the Pharisees, when he betrayed Joshua. It was kind of like he was speaking about both sides of his mouth, wasn't it, Daniel? Around his buddies, around Joshua, around all the rest of the disciples, it was almost like he played and sing one tune. But then, when it came to dealing with the scribes and the Pharisees, he came playing a different tune altogether, didn't he?
Double agent. He was a double agent.
You could say that, he's a double agent. You could say that. Now, while this man was not necessarily... Oh, yes, David.
Yeah, if we can go down the line, considering the brute beast of people that are speaking evil and don't know what they're talking about, you can start from the beginning with Cain, and then you can go to Korah. You can go everybody.
Korah's a great example.
Everybody in the flood before in Noah's time.
Mm-hmm. There's
Talking about Noah building the ark and there's no water and they all died. So
now they got plenty of water.
exactly. So Anytime we look in scripture and we find someone that's speaking of something against what Yahweh wants, I mean, we can throw Peter in that category of, he was trying to prevent Yahshua from being the salvation. And he's like, get behind me, Satan, you don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know what you're talking about. Peter, that's a lesson Peter had to learn the hard way, didn't he?
Yes. So there are many accounts to where people will talk before they understand the big
So you mean instead of just being this dumb animal, you can be trained and tamed and learned and become a good sheep unto Yahweh? Imagine that. A good sheep unto the shepherd.
Yeah. Quick to hear, slow to speak.
Mm-hmm. One great example might be Sennacherib. I can toss that in with David. Now, he wasn't necessarily an apostle. He didn't know Yahweh, but when you read his speech to Hezekiah, it was just chock full of blasphemy, snarling. He didn't have anything good to say about Judea, about Judah. He didn't have anything good to say about Israel. He didn't have anything good to say about Yahweh. It was all snarling and blasphemy. The rabid animal that had to be shot.
Well, in that case, when Pharaoh too,
Pharaoh, you're correct.
he snarled at Moses.
He did it at Moses. And he in spite of the education and schooling that Pharaoh got, he still continued to set in his ways, didn't he? He'd seen all the works of Yahweh up to that point and still refused to turn. Imagine what would have been like had Pharaoh decided at the end of the 7 days of unleavened. Instead of getting an army to go chase after Israel, he said, "Give me my fastest chariot. I'm joining them. I'm leaving Egypt to the rest of y'all." David, you include that in your movie. A little what if.
Exactly.
But we do think about little what if sometimes. It just kind of naturally happens to us. So the brute beast, if you will, rabid beast. And you don't cure rabies, do you? Which is why death and destruction is assured to them. Unless, of course, it comes to your attention that you are a dumb animal with rabies and you approach the great healer. Let's go. Okay, we're going to move on a little bit from fruit beasts. How about fruitless trees? Trees that provide no fruit. Now, again, Jude is not in reference to that big tree outside in the parking lot or any other tree, like a grove of oaks or grove of elms that provide, homes to birds, provide shade. He's not talking about those. He said fruitless trees. And what he means by that is the kind of trees that you would expect to exhibit fruit, right? That's a great apple tree. How come there are no apples on it? Anyone remember the fig tree that Joshua cursed? See, that's what he means by a fruitless tree. The tree was expected to deliver fruit, but never did. Or they don't. Now, if it's not expected, if it's expected to deliver fruit, you would suspect that this tree has been somewhat cared for, right? Actually, because if you don't tend to it properly, it's not going to deliver fruit, is it? Not too often. Especially if you're planting like a garden or an orchard. Because remember, it's being watered in due season. It's being fertile, given the proper nutrition it needs, whatever fertilizer it may need. Back then they had these tenders of gardens and orchards, they had ways of fertilizing their tree. They didn't use the chemical ones like we use today. Undoubtedly these people knew something of how the system worked, because that's how it bore fruit, right? They knew the kind of nutrients it needed to bear fruit. Fruitless trees. Let's turn to Psalm 78, please. We're going to read a couple of verses out of Psalm 78. Psalm 78, we're going to pick it up in verse 29. So they ate and they were filled, for he gave them their own desire. They were not depraved for their craving, but while their food was still in their mouths, the wrath of Yahweh came against them. It's a reference to the Exodus when they ate quail. The wrath of Yahweh came against them, and he slew the stoutest of them and struck down the choice men of Israel. In spite of this, they still sinned. They did not believe his wondrous works. I mean, he just fed them with the food they craved, did not deny them, and they still didn't believe. For their days he consumed their futility, and their years in fear. Now let's contrast this. Let's do a little contrast here. Let's contrast this to Psalms 1, verse 3. We'll take this verse, contrast it with Psalms 1:3. You shall stand like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bring forth its fruits in due season, whose leaf shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. Tell me, what happened to the men we just read of here in Psalm 78? They all perished at the hand of Yahweh. He'd given them everything they said they wanted, and they still didn't believe. They still didn't believe. What it said, what it is written says right here in Psalm 78. It did not believe the works. And for their days he consumed them in futility, and their years in fear. Whatever time the remnant of those guys had left, they seemed to have lived it in fear. Anyone else have any thoughts or ideas? What might make a good type or symbol? Well, we're going to go with waterless clouds here. Let's move on to what about waterless clouds? Now, there are several types of clouds we see in the sky. But there's a certain type that's when you see it, it's supposed to bring rain. It's not these beautiful white, fluffy clouds. They just provide a little shade from the sun in their due season. But what about this giant thunderhead? What about these clouds that bring rain? The kind you hope for that will bring rain to your crops and produce none. Or even if it is a light, beautiful cloud, regardless of the cloud it might be, it's the kind that produce no rain, or it could be both, couldn't it? It could be any kind of cloud. It could be the one you would expect to bring rain and does not, or that useless, oh gosh, here we go, more of these stupid, beautiful white clouds. I need a thunderhead. What does Scripture say about waterless clouds? I mean, because a lot of times these clouds really do look nice and pretty. They bring relief from summer heat at times. Sometimes, like the clouds, what these people pretend to do, they make others feel better And at times, like a short break from a Texas summer heat, but without rain, they still have no real value. That's how these like it is, these apostates. Let's try Proverbs 25, please. Said Proverbs, I'll keep turning back to Psalms. Proverbs 25. Proverbs 25, and let's drop down to verse 14, please. Whoever falsely boasts of giving is like clouds of wind, clouds and winds, but without rain. Well, they bring all that appearance of a storm, all that appearance of a good rain. You got that storm look, you've got the clouds, you got the wind, you've got the drop in temperature, you've got everything but the rain you need. So a lot of times these apostates, oftentimes they're deceivers, they're false teachers, and they're also deceivers. And whoever falsely boasts of giving is like clouds without rain and wind. There's no substance to it. It's not that good rain we need. Hosea 6, verse 4, please. Hosea 6, 4. There you go. Hosea 6, 4. O Ephraim, what shall I do with you? And O Judah, what shall I do to you? For your faithfulness is like a morning cloud. And like the early dew, it goes away. It's just this nice little, pretty looking little cloud. What did Joshua have to say about people and things that look real nice and pretty and all impressive on the outside?
Inside is dead bones.
Full of dead bones. Very good, Daniel. References the scribes and the Pharisees. How they like to deck themselves out all in their fancy robes, their extra long phylacteries and everything else. And they like to be greeted in the marketplaces. You can spot one from a mile away. Oh, there goes a holy man right there. Let's go seek his wisdom, right? But yeah, and on the inside, Joshua told the crowd, they're full of dead men's bones. They're the men who killed the prophets. Yes, David.
It seems like the trend here is living up to your expectations.
Living up to expectations.
Yeah, and you see a cloud and you expect rain and it looks like rain and it doesn't live up, that's a disappointment. If you see a tree or a fig tree or a plant, a vine that doesn't have grapes, you walk up to it, you're expecting to see fruit, but there is no fruit.
Mm-hmm.
If you come across a beast, that beast doesn't have to be wild and brutal, it could be domesticated, it could be civil. So you're walking up and expecting one thing and
Mhm.
your expectations are not lived up.
Because
to.
that's when Paul said is explains the role of the deceiver. You're correct.
Exactly, so that's a warning to us to always live up to our expectations. If someone can look at you and see Yahweh, then inside you should
The
have the
fruits.
spirit of Yahweh.
You mean someone walking up to the family dog? Oh, come here, nice doggy. No.
Right.
The dog springs into action, right? Protect the kids, protect the family. I don't know you. They start back, the hair raises up, and
It's all about expectations.
it's all about expectations.
Curtis,
Yes, Amy.
they could be people who don't walk the talk. You know, they
Mhm.
preach one thing, but their actions say otherwise.
They don't walk the talk, their actions say one thing and their talk says no, you're correct. Actually, I got some time, but I'm not so sure about going through all of these. Let's just keep going, cause I got this one I missed I really want to address before I close. I got this one I missed. I want to close with. Wandering stars. Well, what about wandering stars?
They're expected to stay in their spot.
Yeah, stars, you're right. Most stars, they have a purpose. They're expected to stay in their little place in the heavens, right? But one of them falls out of place, they just go and they make this little fit and they fizzle out, don't they? Oh, they're pretty to look at when we can see them sometimes, right? They light the sky up. But before they're said and done, they burn out or fizzle into nothing. But what's one thing they always do? If they come into contact with anything, anyone or anything, they're going to cause a lot of damage. There's a lot of scientific belief and especially for the scientific community, that's how the moon got all its craters. It came into contact with these little bitty wandering stars, pounded it and knocked some holes in it. Some type of cosmic disturbance. And Tino, do you have a hand up?
Yeah, I wanted to say something, but I'll wait until you.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking about what in Jude's time when he was writing this, it seems like the common thing that was happening was different doctrine going around, like Gnostic beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
and people would get intertwined with these different beliefs and concepts that kind of sound close to what the truth is, but it's not. And so they intertwine these doctrines, and people catch on to it because it sounds like it's right, but it's not. Or it's just flat out wrong, and people, end up going. But I was reading some backstories about that, but we can talk about that later. But I think that, it kind of pertains to the whole thing of when it creeps into the assemblies, these doctrines have a way of, turning everybody away from the truth. Point blank and simple.
You're correct, Tino. Because that's actually a connection between what you just said and what David said earlier. It's a concerning expectation, and these people are not stable. Because in all of these, there's a lack of stability. Brute beasts are not stable. A fruitless tree, there's something, well, it's not stable about a tree, it sits there in one place. No, there's something in its system there's some type of system in its system that's not allowing it to produce fruit. Waterless clouds, they just drift about with no purpose. Wandering stars, they're not stable in their place either. The raging waves he mentioned, they're not stable either. So many of those lack some type of stability. It's like we were told. We were given the power of a sound mind, love. We were not given the spirit of fear. We're given the spirit of love, a sound power, and a sound mind. These apostates have no such thing about them. Let's turn Revelation 8, verse 10. Let's just see what scripture might say about. Give a little taste about what scripture might say about wandering stars.
Where we going?
Revelation 8. We'll pick up in verse 10. Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven like a burning torch. You mean a star falling from like a great torch, a wandering star? Imagine that. And it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. And the name of the star, oh, this one's special. It has a name. The name of the star is Wormwood. And the third of the water became wormwood. And many men died from the water because it was made bitter. Continuing in verse 12, then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, and 1/3 of the moon, 1/3 of the stars, so that 1/3 of them were darkened. And 1/3 of the day did not shine, and the likewise the night. So imagine that. They're not provided the light in due season. And they damage whatever it is they touch. Raging waves also lack the stability. Raging waves, we read of in Jude 13. Lack the stability that both David and Johannes point out. Well, what does Scripture say about raging waves? It says a little bit. Let's go to Isaiah 57, please. So many. Isaiah 57, and let's pick it up in verse 20, shall we? But the wicked are like the troubled sea, when it cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and dirt. And there is no peace, says Yahweh, for the wicked. Raging wave, it's like rather be a sea, an ocean, a lake, or whatever. It's unstable. It's never at rest. When strong winds are going and you see them white caps start kicking up, you can't go out and go fishing on that, can you? No. When that water starts white capping, you need to get off.
There's no fish there.
No fish there. Even the fish don't want to be around it. But you don't want to be on a boat with those things either. Because the water, when these rages, regardless of the body of water that's which they're on, what these waves do, they cast up mire and dirt. Everything's all unsettled in its environment. All the dirt and sediment at the bottom, it's all stirred up. Because if you're going to find fish, you're not going to find it when everything's all stirred up, or are you? No.
Curtis, I don't know if we read
Yes, Tino.
I don't know if we read it already, but did you have James 1:8 in your notes?
James 1:18. Let's go ahead and read it while you're there.
It says, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways.
Double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Just like these raging waves of the sea, he's not stable at all.
Correct.
He's unstable like many of the other things we've read. You're correct, Tino. That's a sign that he is unstable in his ways. He can't make his mind up one way or the next. He's caught between opinions. Say like the folks at Mount Carmel, right? They had 450 different opinions. They weren't caught between two opinions. They were caught between 450, remember? Remember the story of Elijah and the 450 prophets of Baal? Two wasn't enough. Let's try Jeremiah 5, please. Jeremiah 5, we'll pick it up in verse 22. Jeremiah 5, starting verse 20. Actually, I want to pick it up in verse 21, verse 20. This is going to have to capture a little bit of context, actually. Let me back up. Well, let's back up to verse 20 and start there. Declare this in the house of Jacob, proclaim it in Judah, saying, hear this now, foolish people, without understanding, and who have eyes and do not see, and have ears but they cannot hear. Why don't you fear me, says Yahweh? Will you not tremble at my presence? Who have placed the sand as the bound of the sea, and the perpetual decree that cannot pass beyond it? In those ways tossed to and fro, yet they cannot prevail. Yet they uproar, and they cannot pass over it. But this people has a defiant and rebellious heart. They have revolted and they have departed. So he's not talking about people who never knew the way when we pay attention to verse 23. They have revolted and they have departed. That's the key word here. They've revolted against what they once knew, understood, and believed. They've rejected it outright. Back up to verse 22. All those waves tossed to and fro. Now, when waves appear, well, we're not talking little ripples in a pond, but we're talking about big waves like you'd see in the sea or an ocean or a big lake during the storm. It's still not going to flood over the land, is it? And overcome its boundaries, is it? It's not going to do that. It will pound the shore mercilessly a lot of times, but yet they won't. They can't. It's like it just says here. They cannot. Like the waves won't prevail, neither will these proverbial raging waves prevail against what they pound against. Their fate's already been decided. Their rebellion is going to be called for what it is, and it will be dealt with as such. David has given a lot of explanation on that in his studies. I'll refer you to that. It's just like the raging waves bound against the shore. These people fought against the waves and bounds placed by Yahweh. The proverbial raging waves that Jude spoke of. They fought against the bounds and domains placed by Yahweh. I've got a few more listed here, but and I really do want to talk about this one that I missed, but very quickly, I'm going to give you a listing and a few appropriate scriptures. This is the first one's a rhyme: hogs and dogs. We read more about them. 2 Peter 2:22. When dogs, like hogs and swine, they go back to their they go back from whence they came from, to their original uncleanliness. Remember how when we were called up out of our ways? We haven't gone back to them. Where these people, they go back to their ways. Dogs go back to its vomit. Pigs go back to their their wallowing in the mud. There's goats. I'll refer you to what Joshua taught his disciples in Matthew 25, verses 30 through 31, and 41 through 46. We talked about the difference between the sheep and the goats. Sheep, you come over here to my right, goats to the left, and get out. And last, I just gotta go back to this one I missed. Let's turn back to Jude very briefly. This one actually just occurred to me while I was reading it. Likewise, Jude 8, likewise also these dreamers defile the flesh. They reject authority and speak evil of dignitaries. And this is what's going to tie into some of the studies David's done recently. Who were some of these dreamers that did these things? That do these things that Jude just spoke of? Well, we got the story of the sons of Eli, what they did to the children of Israel when they received offerings from the people, and how they took advantage of the women, shall we say. And their conduct in their office. I guess they were dreamers, thought they could, was going to go on indefinitely. They took it as their license, if you will, against grace. They were given a grand position by Yahweh, and they held it virtually no esteem. They dreamers thought they could go on their way. Let us turn. Let's read about another dreamer. This guy is found in number 16. His name is Korah. Number 16, verse 1. Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan, Abiram, Eli, and On, the son of Peleth, the sons of Reuben, took men. And the story goes down here. They rose up before Moses with some of the children of Israel, some 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown. So that's quite a uprising here. And we're just, I guess a large number of people were supposed to lend credence to what to the matter, to their charge against Moses. And they gathered together, verse 3, against Moses and Aaron, and said, you take on too much yourselves, because all the congregation is holy, every one of them. And Yahweh's amongst them too. So why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of Yahweh? You think you're better than everybody else. Was there any truth to it? Well, there was. If you remember Exodus 19, 5 and 6. What does it say? Because that's what part of their deception was about. That's what helped a large number of men and their appeal to what they've been told earlier. I'm keeping my place here, but I'm going to read the Exodus 19, 5 and 6. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my command, and you shall be a special treasure above me for all people, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to who? The children of Israel. So yeah, there was an element of deception in there. Using the law unlawfully, if you will. A grand misapplication of Scripture. They just expect the congregation to remember that. Oh yeah, he did say that we were a holy nation. He did say we were all special, we were all supposed to be a kingdom of priests unto Yahweh. But what was it really about? When Moses heard it, fell upon his face, and he spoke unto Korah and all his company, saying, well, even tomorrow Yahweh will show you who are his, and who is holy, and will cause him to come near to him. One who he chooses will come near to him. Now Moses gives them directions on what to do, and in verse 8, and Moses said to Korah, now hear now, you sons of Levi, is it a small thing that the Mighty One of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the work of the tabernacle of Yahweh, and to stand before the congregation to serve them, that he has brought to you to himself, you and all your brethren, the sons of Levi, with you, and now you're seeking the priesthood also. Therefore, you and all your company are gathered together against Yahweh. And what is Aaron that you complain against him? Yeah, well, he reminds them of their calling before Yahweh, and he said, now you're dragging in Aaron. What did Aaron do to you? Aaron didn't do anything to you. He even takes up for his brother here. And how does this story end up? Well, for Korah and his followers, not so good. They get swallowed up. What do these two examples have in common?
Challenging Yahweh's authority.
They're challenging Yahweh's authority, that's one. What else? Well, let me give you another hint. We've read this earlier. Let's go to Ezekiel. Ezekiel 44. I'm going to pick it up in verse 10. And the Levites who went far from me, when Israel went astray, strayed away from me after their idols. Yet they shall be ministers to me in my sanctuary as gatekeepers in the house of ministers of Yahweh, because they slay the burnt offering and the sacrifice for the people, but they shall stand for me to minister. Yet verse 13. And they shall not come near to me to minister to me as priests, nor come near any of my holy things, nor unto the most holy place. They shall not come to the most holy place, nor because they will bear their shame and their abominations which they have committed. Nevertheless, but the priests, verse 15, the Levites, the sons of Zadok, who kept charge of my sanctuary when the children of Israel went astray from me, they shall come minister to me, and they shall stand before me to offer the fat and the blood, says Yahweh. They shall enter my sanctuary. They shall come near my table to minister to me, and they shall keep my charge. What do you say about this first group of priests? That should be the example, right? All three of these have this in common. They're a priest. And all of them had their own ideas, their own dreams, if you will. Sons of Levi, or Eli rather, they were serving themselves. Their God was their own belly in more ways than one. They grew fat and they grew thick. Remember how it said they all grew obese, like father, like son. They all became rather large, shall we say, in their mishandling of their duties and of all the foods and offering brought before them. Korah. What was his dream, so to speak? His I have a dream. He and his followers, they wanted the priesthood. You make me the high priest, I'll set you rest of you guys all up real good.
Wanted to be in power.
They wanted the power that went with it. Because like Eli and his side, they became drunk on the power. And the sons of Korah, the followers of Korah, became drunk on the power they sought. Yes, David.
Same thing similar to Miriam. Moses' sister, the fact that she didn't voice her need for power to everybody, but in secrecy, she thought that she could actually supersede Moses. She was afflicted with leprosy and thrown outside of the camp. So she got off easy, but still wanted power.
Yeah,
for
she got
herself.
off easy. They should have taught the rest of them a lesson, you'd think.
Right.
But they didn't believe the works, did they?
No.
These priests here, we just read of in Ezekiel 44. Now the bad group here that defiled their temple. Remember it said, that they defiled they defile themselves, the priesthood, their work, and the temple itself with their own dreams. Because what does it say here? They brought in their idols. Like we read in the first 3 verses. They brought in their idols, like it says in verse 12 of Ezekiel 44. Because they ministered then before all their idols and caused the house of Israel to fall into iniquity. Same thing with the priest did in this time in Ezekiel 8, when they did all their abominations. Now what's this got to do with what David's been talking about? Let us go to 2 Thessalonians 2, shall we? They had their own dream and they brought their idols into the temple. Remember, now when is this Ezekiel 44? When is this punishment of the priest taking place? In the millennium, right? During the millennial setting. When he's separating the good guys from the bad guys, if you will. 2 Thessalonians 2. No wonder it don't look right. I'm in 1 Thessalonians. Here we go. I'm going to pick it up in verse 3. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless a falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition. So, yes, there will be another temple because man of sin is not going to be revealed without it. Who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Yahweh or all that is worshipped. So he sits in the temple of Yahweh, having shown himself that he is Elohim. Or do you not remember when I told you these things? Now what is restraining? That he may be revealed in his own time. What will be his own time? For the mystery of lawlessness is already worked, for he and now strength will only do so until he's taken out of the way. Then the lawless one will be revealed, for whom Yahweh will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working and power of Satan, with all power, with all lying signs and wonders, all signs and lying wonders, with all unrighteousness deception amongst those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. They didn't believe the works either. Therefore Yahweh will send them a strong delusion that they should believe the lie, that they may be condemned who do not believe the truth, have pleasure in righteousness. These men too, this guy here too, has his own goals, has his own desires. They're bringing their own idols. They got their other things shall be served. We could just go on about this all day long too. But as we're looking at time's not going to permit that. Is there any question or comment? If there's no question or comment, we'll close. We'll be back 1 o'clock next Sabbath. And Johan's branch will have the study. Yes, I understand. Yes, Johan's branch will